Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me? In the back, sisters? All right, perfect. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. Welcome to our workshop for today, which is about the 3 pillars of a happy marriage. Now, this workshop is actually part of a bigger program that I run, and I coach people on a 12-session program, and we did it in a group setting as well. That was 24 hours. So I'm going to do my best to summarize the most important aspects in 3 hours, inshallah. So the first thing before we start, we're going to do an exercise. It's called 7 layers deep. Okay? You guys with me? So the first question I have for you is, why are you attending this workshop? So if you have the workbook with you, or if you have a notebook with you, and even if you don't have a workbook or notebook, think of it. Okay? Why are you attending this workshop? Before that, how many people are married here? MashaAllah. And how many people are single? Okay, for the single people, I want you to ask yourself, why do you want to get married? Okay, that's your question. And for those who are married, why are you attending this workshop? Okay, let's go to the second level. Whatever you wrote down, whatever you thought of, why is that important? Why is it important to achieve that? What will that give you? Third level, whatever you wrote down for your second level, why is that important? What will it give you? Let's take it down another level. Fourth level, whatever you wrote down on the previous level, why is that important? Why is it important for you to have that? What will it give you? What is it ultimately going to give you? Fifth level. Whatever you wrote on the fourth level, take it down one more level. Why is that important? What is it ultimately going to give you? What are you hoping to achieve through that? Now, usually by 5 levels, people are at a good answer. Let's take it down one more level if we can. Whatever you wrote on level 5, if you take it down one more level, why is that important? What will that give you? What is it ultimately that you want? Let's take it down one more level. All right? You guys with me? My voice is loud enough. Actually, there we go. So let's take it down one more level. Whatever you wrote on level 6, why is it important for you to have that? What is it ultimately that you want? What is the ultimate goal? How many people got to something to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So if you did the exercise correctly, that's your ultimate why. That is your why. Now this is very important because that's your intention. When this is your intention, everything you do for your family, for your spouse, becomes an act of worship. Because that's the ultimate intention. And you need to bring this intention with you with whatever you do for your spouse, for your family. Because everything becomes an act of worship and everything becomes a means to getting good deeds. Because that's your ultimate why. The first layer was probably to learn how to have a good marriage. But the digger you deep, the higher you go, you get to the need of your soul. Because we're two components. We're the body and we're the soul. And the soul's ultimate goal or its ultimate need is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you have three types of relationships. You have the first level where it's selfish love. My needs come first. It's all about me, 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 me. The other person is not important. Level 2 is conditional love, contractual love. That, hey, look, I can give you this, but you need to give me this. Everything else you need to figure out on your own. Level 3 is unconditional love for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is where the other's needs comes first. And in order to get to this level, you have to play at ihsan. You have to have that why. If you don't have that intention, you cannot play at this level. And in order to play at this level, you need 3 pillars in place as well. So the 3 pillars for a happy marriage are, number 1 is your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the most important pillar. Now that pillar translates into relationship with yourself. And when I say relationship with yourself, I'm saying your psychological relationship with yourself. How you think, how your heart is. And then comes the easy part, which is a relationship with your spouse. But in order to truly succeed at the 3rd level, these 2 things need to be in place first. Then the last part becomes easy. And if you notice, most programs, most books that are out there, they're more geared towards the last pillar. How do you communicate better? What can you say? How do you understand? What are the needs of each spouse? How are they different? How do you deal with conflict? And one of the reasons why there's such a big relapse when it comes to marital therapy is because you're exclusively focusing on this aspect. Now, if the first 2 pillars are not there, it becomes very difficult, and it makes sense why there's such a big relapse there. Because in order to be able to give to your spouse, if you're not in a good place, spiritually and mentally, it becomes very difficult to give to your spouse. It becomes very easy to get triggered. People feel like they're walking on eggshells. Something small that they say gets taken the wrong way completely. Most problems happen because of misunderstandings. So this is where the first 2 pillars become very, very important. So pillar 1 is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now why is that important? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, that I did not create the humans and the jinn except to worship me. That is our purpose, that we exist here. If we're not fulfilling that purpose, then what other purpose are we going to fulfill? That happiness that we seek, that sense of security, it comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It does not come from our children. It does not come from our spouse. So this is the most important pillar. And if you notice, marriage is not just something 2 people go get together and they have a party and that's it. You need a wali. You need 2 witnesses. You have a mahar. There's conditions that the deen put in place. If you intend to separate, there's conditions. You can't just walk out and think that's the end of it. But there's conditions Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has legislated. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has told us about. So nikah. And this is in the books of fiqh. You find the 3rd quarter, at least in the Hanbali madhab, deals with these relationships. It's completely laid out there. So this is an act of worship. A means to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The famous ayah that anytime you go, who's been to a wedding recently? Anyone been to a wedding recently? What's the famous ayah that's recited in every wedding? ومن آياته أن خلق لكم من أنفسكم أزواجا لتسكنوا إليها وجعل بينكم مودة ورحمة إن في ذلك لآيات لقوم يتفكرون. That from his signs is that he created for you from yourselves mates that you might find tranquility in them. لتسكنوا إليها. Now we translate تسكنوا as you may live with one another. But another definition is that you may find tranquility in one another. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who has put that love, mercy, compassion there. These scholars, they mentioned that if these three things are there, then that means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's impact is there in the marriage. And if it's not there, that means something's wrong. We have to figure out what's wrong. Because that's the default state of a marriage, that we find that tranquility in our spouse. Allah is the one who's placed this mahabba, this mawadda, this love, mercy, compassion between the spouses when they're a stranger just a couple months ago, you could say, a couple days ago sometimes, a couple of weeks ago. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that placed that in there. If that is missing, that means it's time to check internally what's going on. And the first place we need to look is, what is my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Is there something that's missing there? Do I need to check or fix something that's there? Because if that's in place, everything else becomes easier, because we can learn the skill set that it takes to actually have a wonderful marriage, especially in today's day and age. This verse is the key to a happy marriage. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, and live with them in goodness. Now it is so precise. It says, وَعَاشِرُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. What does this mean? Ma'ruf goes back to two things. Goes back to ihsan, live with your spouses in ihsan, at a higher level, show up at your best. And it goes back to culture as well. What is the culture in 2023 when it comes to marriage? Right, we always say the expectations have gone up. People expect more in today's day and age. Whereas once upon a time, maybe at our parents' generation, it was enough for one person to be the breadwinner and the other one to take care of the home. That was yakfi, that was good enough. Anything else was a bonus. But in today's day and age, you do require to have better communication skills. You are expected to be romantic. You are expected to be in control of your emotions. You are expected to be good at dealing with conflict. And the beauty of this verse is that it's applicable in every era. If the expectations goes up, all that means is we need a new skill set. We need to show up at a higher level, and we can learn that skill set bi'idhnillah. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أنا عند ظن عبدي بي إن ظن خيرا فله وإن ظن شرا فله. This is a very important verse when it comes, or a hadith when it comes to our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That the Prophet ﷺ said that I am as my slave expects me to be. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying this. If he thinks good, then they will have that. And if they think bad, then that's what they're going to have as well. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَنَا عِنْدَ ظَنِّ عَبْدِي بِي فَلْيَظُنْ بِي مَا شَاءَ. That I am as my slave expects me to be, so let them think of me as they want. Now, in the workbook, I actually want you to do this when you go home. I want you to take some time and actually write out what your good expectations of Allah is when it comes to your marriage. You can even do this for your life, but we're focusing on marriage. What are my good thoughts of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Put them down on paper. If nothing is coming, then we need to create those good expectations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How do you expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be for you in your marriage? And those thoughts that come down requires us to actually do something about it. If we expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us with a good marriage, then we have to do what is necessary in order to create that. And this is where dua as well comes in. The Prophet ﷺ said that ask Allah for His favor, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves to be asked. Allah loves to be asked. Human beings hate to be asked. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He loves to be asked. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nothing is impossible for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For those who are single, it's difficult to find a spouse, right? Who says yes? That's your expectation of Allah. So if you think it's difficult, you're going to find it difficult. It is not difficult. But it does require a process. You can't just sit at home, make dua, and expect the spouse to fall down. You have to have a strategy in place. How are you going to find it? What's going to be your strategy? So if you think it's going to be difficult, you're going to experience that. Because in a way, you're expecting Allah to make it difficult for you. So change that process. Change how you look at it. Think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy, but you have to actually go do something about it. Now, in Islam, you have this concept of beautiful manners as well. That is not just your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this plays out in how we deal with one another. So there's 4 hadith that we looked at yesterday that we're going to go over again. That when your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is strong, it's easy to implement this. And we'll look at practical ways that how we can actually implement it. So the first hadith is that whoever man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir falyaqul khayran aw liyasmut. That whoever believes in Allah and the last day from Iman is to speak good or remain silent. And this is communication mastery. The encouragement is to speak good first. If we're unable to do that, then remain silent. Don't make it worse than it needs to be. Because sometimes silence and taking your break will calm you down. The thought will pass. The feeling will change. Which means you come back in a more calm state to discuss things. And we'll look at practically how to apply this hadith in our lives. The next one is the Prophet ﷺ, somebody came to him and asked him for advice and he said, don't get angry. He repeated his request. He said, don't get angry. This is emotional mastery. The third hadith is that the Prophet ﷺ said, "Min husn al-Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni." That from the goodness of a person's Islam is that they leave off that which does not concern them. So we should be concerned about that which is going to benefit us in our marriages. What can I do that will improve my marriage? What can I let go of that will improve my marriage? What things do I need to focus on? What types of discussions should I be having with my spouse? What kind of environment do I need to create for my marriage to thrive in my home? So focus mastery. Because where focus goes, energy flows. When we focus on all the negatives that are going there, we're going to be tired by thinking about it. We're only going to be notice the negative aspects. And finally, none of you truly believes until they love for their brother that which they love for themselves. And when we talk about these ahadith, when it comes to mannerisms, we always talk about generally. We talk about dealing with the people in the community, with our friends. But it is more important to apply them in our relationships, with our spouses, to apply these hadith. Do actual implementation of them. Because when we do, you get rewarded for it. And they are more deserving of our good conduct and character than other people. Because it's easy to be nice in the street. You know, when you meet somebody, you just see them once in a while, it's easy to smile in their face, to speak nicely. But those people that we see day in and day out, every minute we're with them, it's easy to let loose on them. And the Prophet ﷺ said, خَيْرُكُمْ, that the best of you, خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ, are the best to their families. In this hadith. The best amongst whom though? In whose eyesight? The best with who? The best with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because it's easy to be Abu Bakr outside, but then we transform into Abu Jahl inside. But we want to be Abu Bakr inside, and we also want to be Abu Bakr outside as well. So then comes pillar number 2. So the first pillar is the most important one, which is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we are constantly working on that that we are connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that we are implementing His verses, because it's all there. Every ingredient for a happy marriage is already there in the Quran and the Sunnah. We have to learn how to implement it and actually live according to that. So anytime there is a conflict, the first thing we want to look at, what have I been doing? Is there something going on in my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that is impacting my marriage? That's the first thing we want to look at. If that is solid, alhamdulillah, then all it takes is to learn a skill set of how to deal with these issues. And we can all learn that. So the second pillar is your relationship with yourself. In terms of how do you think? So we're going to do an exercise. So the first thing is, for those who have a book and pen, and for those who don't, I want you to think and allow your thoughts to flow. Write down your thoughts about your relationship and your spouse. And for those who are single, think about, what do you think of marriage or finding a spouse? What are your thoughts in regards to that? So for those who are married, I want you to take a minute and just put your thoughts down on paper. My relationship is, my spouse is, and what comes on paper? What comes out? And if you don't have a book, then just allow your mind to flow. Let the thoughts come out. My spouse is, my relationship is what? Let the thoughts come out. My wife is, my husband is the biggest jerk in the world. Right? If that comes, put it down. Let your thoughts, put them down on paper, see what they are. There's no right or wrong answer. Just be honest with yourself. What are your thoughts about your spouse and your relationship? My relationship is what? Okay, so put your thoughts down on paper. Step 2, how do you feel when you think these thoughts? What is the feeling that comes up? Now, feelings are one-word things: happy, excited, joy, angry, resentful, hurt. What are the feelings that come up when you think these thoughts? Write all the feelings that come up when you think these thoughts and put it down on paper. Or be mindful of what they are. Feelings are one word, right? Happy, joy, excited, hurt, angry, uncared for, resentment, hatred. What are the feelings the thoughts generate? Now ask yourself which one of the thoughts is most likely causing that feeling. So connect the thought to the feeling. Connect the thought to the feeling, because they're connected. Connect the thought to the feeling. Do you see the connection? Connect the thought to the feeling. Step 3 is, now you probably have a list of mixed feelings. There's going to be some positive ones, and there's going to be negative ones there as well. Okay? So step 3 is, how do you act or behave when you feel this way? What are you doing or not doing? So when you feel the positive emotions, or when you feel the positive feelings, how do you act and behave? And when you feel the negative feelings and emotions, how do you act and behave? What are you doing, and what are you not doing? And then step 4 is, how is this behavior impacting your relationship? Because usually when we feel negative feelings, our behavior is that we're pulling away. We're not connecting. We're not speaking. Sometimes we're trying to take revenge, trying to teach them a lesson. And ultimately, how does that behavior impact your relationship? How does that behavior impact your relationship? Now, there's an illusion that feeling comes from what the other person is doing. That they are the ones who are making me angry. They're the ones who are upsetting me. It is the house or the car that's giving me happiness. But the reality is that feelings comes from thought in the moment. It's because we're thinking in a certain way, that's why the feeling is there. And that is the healthy situation, because that means we're in control. And if I'm able to understand that I'm thinking a certain way, that's why I'm feeling in a certain way, that feeling ultimately will lead me to take some sort of action, and that action is going to produce a result. So how I interpret what my spouse is doing, the meaning I attach to it is going to create that feeling. They could walk in and give like a "Assalamu alaikum," just walk away. And then we interpret it as what? Right? So that's the situation just happened. They walked in, it was a cold salam, and then all of a sudden, we felt something. Now between the situation and the actual feeling, there's something that comes in the middle, which is the thought. How we interpreted that behavior. Oh, he doesn't care about me. Or he's just out to get me. Oh, she's just being cold. She doesn't care about me. And ultimately, that thought is going to lead to a feeling. So the situation is how we look at it. Perspective is very important. How we interpret our spouse's behavior is very, very important, because that is going to cause the feeling ultimately. And that feeling is always going to determine what you do. If you feel negative feelings, it's going to be difficult for you to be warm and loving towards them. But you have control over this. So step 5 now becomes, how would you like to feel about this person? Okay, what are the feelings you actually want to have towards them? Those one words: love, care, respect, whatever those feelings are. Okay, so that's the first thing. What are the feelings you actually want to have in your relationship for your spouse? Nobody goes into a relationship saying that, I can't wait to be angry at my spouse. Right? Anyone do that? I can't wait to have an argument with them and feel hurt by them. Right? We all go in, before we got married, what was the dream? I can't wait to feel loved and cared for and passionate. Right? So if you want to feel that, how do you have to think about the situation and about them in order for you to feel this way? So this is the next part, the feelings that you actually want to feel. How do you have to think about your spouse in order to feel that situation? So I want you to write it down. How do I need to feel? What feelings I want to feel? Whatever you write down, love, cared for, respect, joy, excitement. How do I need to think in order for me to feel that feeling? Put it down on paper, because that becomes your blueprint. So this aspect is very important. Situation happens or circumstance is there that creates a feeling. But there's a gap there. There's something happening before the feeling. Is the thought or the interpretation of that event is ultimately what's going to cause the feeling. For example, you have the husband is watching the basketball game and the kids are running crazy. And the mother might be going like, don't you see what's happening in front of you? And he's just relaxed, she's chilled out, he's watching the game because it doesn't bother him, because he's not thinking of that. But she is looking at that and something else is going on in her mind. And she can think that, oh, he doesn't care, he just, doesn't care about the family, just wants to do his own thing. But for him, he's probably in a completely different world. It's two different realities that are playing out. So you can change the way you feel by changing your perception, so the meaning you're giving to the situation, or the procedure, the way you communicate or behave. So if you're unable to change the way you feel by changing your perception, then you need to change the way you're communicating. Because it could be it's something that's really important to you. Sure, I could look at it and just interpret it in a different way. But if it's still continuously bothering you, that means you need to bring it up and actually communicate in a different way. So you can change the way you feel by changing the meaning you give to a situation. Because the meaning you give to a situation, is it a fact or is it opinion? Fact means that everyone will agree on it. You walked in the door and you slammed the door. Okay, for example. That could be a fact. Everyone saw it, that happened. Opinion is you walked in the door, you slammed the door. This means you don't care, you have anger issues, you just want to, you're not in control of your emotions. You have some childhood trauma that you need to deal with. This is opinion. Right? We're attaching meaning to a situation that might not necessarily be there. So you can change the way you feel by changing your perception. So now these emotions are actually telling you something. So each emotion is telling you something. So we're going to look at 10 emotions, and most emotions can go under these. And we're looking at negative emotions. So the first is uncomfortable. So if you feel uncomfortable, then you need to change your state. It means you're not clear about what you want. So get clear on what you actually want rather than what you don't want. Because most people, they know what they don't want. But what do you actually want? Get clear on that and actually take action towards that. Start moving in that direction. Or look at it, like, what am I really uncomfortable about? What am I worried about? And let the thought play out. Then you'll see that, oh, I'm not really worried about something big. For example, I had a client who it would really get stressful for them when guests were coming over because the house had to be extremely tidy. Okay, so what happens if it's not tidy? That means they're not going to have a good time. Okay, what happens if they don't have a good time? That means I'm a bad host. Okay, what happens if you're a bad host? That means people are not going to like me. So now it becomes that the relationship gets put under pressure because we're out to please people and stuff. But the reality is that's not going to happen because people actually do their best when they're actually hosting people. So it's uncomfortable, then get clear on what you want and actually take action towards that. The next thing is fear. If you feel fear, that means be prepared. If the IRS is coming to check you, get your documents in order. That way you prevent that. Or sometimes if you're even questioning it, what am I really afraid of? Are my documents in order? Yes. What am I afraid of? Question the thought as well, and you'll see that, hey, it's not really, I'm not afraid of, there's nothing to really be afraid of. But if there's something to actually be afraid of, then actually get prepared and prepare yourself for that so that you take that feeling away. So that's what's called changing the procedure. That actually be prepared. Now hurt. So the emotion is saying that an expectation is not being met and you have a feeling of loss. So here you have to actually question it. Is there really a loss there? Or am I just interpreting it that way? Is there really a loss? Or if it is something that's really important, because what happens is unspoken expectations will always lead to hurt. Because we expect our spouse to behave a certain way. Oh, something happened, we argued, they should bring me flowers. Or they should do this for me. And when it's not communicated, we're not mind readers, we don't know. In our world, it could be like a simple thank you, I'm sorry is good enough. But in their world, it could be something they're expecting something grand. And then they get hurt on top of that. So expectations, communicate it to your spouse. Hey, I know when this happens, but it really makes me feel better that when we get in an argument, we're able to make up and we spend like a few hours out together. Because you're making it easier for them to give you what you want, rather than making it easier for yourself to feel hurt. Because most people, they have a highway to stress and a long journey to feel the actual positive emotions. So you want to switch it. You want to make it actually easier for your spouse to be able to give you what you want and make it more difficult to feel upset at them. So if it's hurt, that means there's an expectation that's not getting met. Either question that and see it what for it is, or communicate that in a nice way to them. Then you have anger. And this is very important because anger can destroy relationships. Years of work. Anger gets the better of you. Shaitan takes over. Whatever comes out. Years of work can be destroyed in a minute. So anger is you have a rule that has been violated. People should not cut me off. Honking, F you, Does he know about your rule? But we have that rule that the person should not violate it. So let the person know that you have a certain standard, that you like certain things bother you. But really questioning, can you really control that situation? Then you have frustrated. You might need to change your approach to achieve your goal. And a lot of people feel this with dua. That they feel frustrated. That I've been making dua, why isn't it happening? So in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He answers every single dua. How it manifests is different. Because He might give it to you right away. He might delay it for you. He might store it for you in the akhirah. He might prevent something bad to happen to you. Sometimes you might not be ready for that dua to be answered. So we have to get ready or postpone the duration for it. If you have a goal, you didn't meet it in 6 months, no problem. Give it another 2 months. Maybe the timeline was too soon. Maybe you're not ready. You don't have the skill set to achieve that goal at this moment. Then you have disappointed. Your expectation might not be appropriate for the situation at hand. So change the expectation. Or communicate it. That hey, I was expecting something to happen, it didn't happen, but I would really appreciate it if you were mindful of this. Guilty or regretful, you've violated one of your own standards, so you have to make sure that you don't do it again. It's not worth beating yourself up about it and then feeling down, and then that leads to a sour relationship between yourself and your family. But if you have violated a standard that you hold dear, then take responsibility and make sure and commit that you don't do that again. Inadequate, right? And this is, people have imposter syndrome. But when you have the skill set, then it's okay. You just need to build that confidence to actually go and do it. But if you actually truly feel inadequate, that you're not ready, then become ready. A lot of people feel that they cannot. Who has a fear of public speaking here? That's apparently the number one fear in America. Anyone? Fear of public speaking? Okay, mashallah. All right. For that to get rid of it, you just have to prepare and do it once. And even if you look like a fool, it's okay. What's the worst that's going to happen? So if you do it once or you train yourself, then you build that confidence. But in order for that confidence to get built, you have to actually do something about it. Thinking is going to, you hype yourself up by thinking, but then you actually have to go and perform. So when it comes to public speaking, that's what it is. You have to actually do it. Then you say, oh, it wasn't that bad. I overthought it. Then you have overwhelmed and hopeless. So over here, when people feel overwhelmed, you need to prioritize. What are the important things that I need to care about? What are the important things I need to focus on? What's number 1, 2, and 3? You can't do everything. You can't please every single person. But what are the top 3 things that I need to focus on? Number 1, also, why am I overwhelmed? Am I trying to please everyone that's there? So make a list and do the most important things. And then finally, you have this sense of feeling lonely. This is where people need to be proactive and actually go and connect with other people. Right? Take a proactive approach. Don't wait, nobody's checking up on me. Rather be proactive and go and meet people. So emotions, they don't just happen. We do the emotion. So when it comes to meaning, you have this triad. So your physiology, your focus, and your language. Now most therapy is geared towards focus. Then you have talk therapy as well, where you choose. But an underutilized tool to change your feeling is physiology, which is using your body to change it. And you see this in our tradition that the Prophet ﷺ, he said when somebody is angry, what should they do if they're standing? Sit down. If you're sitting, what should you do? Lie down. Right? Go make wudu. Changing your physiology will also change your state. Usually people, when they feel down, you can tell from their body language that they're feeling down. Because their shoulders are down. They're breathing shallow. But just by pulling your shoulders back and breathing, you can change the way you feel. There's actually a study done. I can't remember which university did it. I think Stanford maybe. It's like, the Wonder Woman pose. People pose like that for a few minutes in front of the mirror. That builds their confidence. Right? Jumping up and down. Like nobody's going to be jumping up and down. But they do it at Tony Robbins events and stuff. They make them jump up and down and stuff. And it changes the way they feel. So this is an underutilized way of changing your state. The next is focus. That what are you thinking about? And as we looked at, when we think negatively, we create negative feelings. So change your focus. Focus on things that are actually important. Things that are actually there that you're not looking at. And then you have language. Language is important. I'm so angry. If you say you're so angry, you're going to feel so angry. But if you say, I'm a little bit annoyed, you won't feel as angry. So language is key. So these 3 things, if we take control of it, change your physiology first and foremost. Say a'udhu billah. And language also key. The Prophet ﷺ said, when he saw somebody who was getting angry, he said, I know if he says something that will change the way he's feeling. And what did he tell him? What did he tell them to say? To seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Say, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Now we say this and we're like, oh, it didn't do anything. Because we don't believe he's going to do anything. If we don't believe he's going to do anything, then it's not going to do anything. But the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that this will work. But we have to understand what we're saying. A'udhu, I seek refuge in who? I turn towards who? I am weak. I can't control myself. I'm turning towards who? Towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The one who controls everything, who runs everything. That nothing can happen. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There is no shift. Can't go from one point to another point except with the permission, might of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Imam says, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala al-falah, what do we say? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Why is that? Because even though we hear the call for salah, we don't have the ability to go there. That's why we say, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, that Allah gives us the ability to make that move. So even language is very important. How you express yourself is going to have an impact on how you feel. The stronger emotions and words you use, you're going to feel that emotion. But if you choose to say, I'm a little bit annoyed, and even in that tone, that will make you feel a little bit annoyed. But if you choose to say, oh my goodness, I can't believe this, it's going to make you feel more intense inside. So now, 6 steps to mastering your emotions. Now I want you to think of an instance when you were upset, annoyed at your spouse or a family member. And we're going to go through 6 steps. And you don't have to go through all 6 of them, depending on the situation. You can go through maybe 2, 3, and you'll feel that the emotion has subsided. The first one is understand what you're feeling and appreciate the message. Let yourself feel it. Because the more you resist, the more it persists. Allow yourself to feel it. Because if you notice, when you feel something, where do you feel it? You usually feel it somewhere within your body, right? You feel it somewhere. If you locate it in your body, you'll feel it somewhere there. Neck, heart, maybe head, gut. So allow yourself to actually feel it because it's inside of you. Because when you allow it to, you feel it, as time passes, thought will change and the emotion subsides. It goes away. But when we resist it and we keep thinking and overthinking, it just keeps persisting. Okay, so that's step 1. Understand what you're feeling. Most people cannot identify what they're feeling. So in the workbook, you have a whole list of emotions that you can go back and look, what am I actually feeling? Everything is anger, anger, anger. Or upset, upset, upset. Right? There's more emotions than anger and upset. Number 2 is what meaning did you give to that situation? So the situation that you're recalling right now when you're upset at your spouse, how did you interpret that event? What meaning did you give to it? What thoughts did you throw at it? She is this, she is that, he is this, he is that. So what meaning did you give to it? Think of the situation, understand what you were feeling at that time, and then what meaning did you give to that situation? How did you interpret your spouse's behavior? Next one. Move into your heart. Be in the moment. Be in the moment and ask yourself, is my spouse purposefully trying to make me feel this way? Is he or she deliberately trying to make me feel this way? And the answer is always going to be the answer is always going to be yes. The answer usually is going to be no. Now, who felt their defense go down? Anyone felt their defense go down? Jazakallah khair. So if you honestly ask yourself and ask your heart, knowing who your spouse is. If you genuinely believe they're a good person, then the answer is always going to be no. And that lowers your defenses, which gives you a chance now to turn it around. So this is where step 4 comes in. Now become resourceful and ask yourself, what else could it have meant? What's another way I could have looked at it? Maybe they were just tired. Maybe they were thinking of something that led them to say that. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe they just don't know how to communicate. So become resourceful and ask yourself, what else could it have meant? And you have to force yourself to think of a different meaning. Because your brain wants to think of the negative thing. Shaitan wants you to think of the negative things. He wants you to give it a negative meaning. Because there's nothing that gives him more joy than causing problems and separating between husband and wife. Shaitan's throne, the Prophet ﷺ told us, is on water. And every day his cronies, they come back to him and they tell him that I did such and such. I made this person drink. I made this person do that. I made this person do this. And he brushes them off. So you haven't done anything. And then one of them comes and he says, I separated between husband and wife. And he says, come. Anta, jazakallah khair. Come sit. He makes him sit with you. Because that ruins the foundation of a society. Separating between husband and wife. That environment that it creates when they are going at each other. So become resourceful and ask yourself, what else could it have meant? How could I look at it? And this is where husn al-dhan comes in. We'll always look at husn al-dhan from a perspective of when dealing with people, community members, workers. Umar bin Khattab said, if you have the ability to have husn al-dhan, good thoughts about an individual, there's room for that, then do that first, before you let your mind take over and go to everything that negative it could be. So this is the same thing, but we need to apply it within our homes first and foremost. These principles are not just for outside people. It's more important to implement it inside the home. So what else could it have meant? Now many times by the time you get to step 3, you're like, they're purposely not trying to do this, I'm okay. Then you go to step 4, what else could it have meant? You have to give it at least a few different meanings. And that could also get rid of the emotion. Now, if it's something that's really important, now you have to go to step 5, where understand the message behind the emotion. If changing the meaning doesn't change the feeling, now you have to change the procedure. So if it is a standard that you have that keeps getting violated, you take responsibility for that. And you say, look, I have this standard. I know you're not purposely trying to violate it. I know I haven't communicated to you, but this is really important to me. And I would really appreciate and love if you are mindful for that. You see, there's no blame there. It's full responsibility that we take. I would love for you to do this when things get heated between us, because it makes me feel this way. So it's full responsibility of taking charge of that emotion. But when it's attack, you did this, that's why it happened. What is the natural response when somebody feels criticized? Say that louder, please. You become defensive, right? But when somebody takes responsibility for the way they feel and they communicate in this way, and we'll get into this when we get into communication, then you lower, the person cannot get defensive unless they have something going on. Then it's like, why are you getting defensive? I haven't even said anything to you. I'm taking full responsibility, but that's coming, inshallah. And then finally, decide how you would actually like to feel. So by creating that thought in the moment, get confident, turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seek refuge in Him, and then actually go do something. Right? You have to take action, because the action is going to solidify that feeling for you. You can change it with the thought, but you actually have to follow through with the action. So if you want to feel loved, then take responsibility and go and do an act of love towards your spouse. As difficult as it may seem. And what we want to do is we want to cultivate the emotions for a great relationship. love and warmth, appreciation and gratitude, curiosity, excitement and passion, determination, confidence, these kind of things. This is what we want to focus on. How can I build these emotions? How can I feel these emotions? What needs to happen in order for me to feel these emotions within my home?
Can you please elaborate on curiosity?
The curiosity, get curious. Why is this important to them? You know, asking questions. Why is this important to you? Because a lot of times people, they get annoyed at their spouse's habits. Why does he care about Star Wars so much? You know, and they start judging. Why is she so much? Why is cleanliness so important to her, for example? Right? The house is already clean. Why does it need to be Mr. Clean? Right? But get curious. Ask questions. Hey, what's about this? Sit down with them. What does it do for you? Let me experience the same thing that they're going through. That doesn't mean that you have to start loving the same thing, but become curious. Why is this important to you? Why is it upsetting you? That's what curiosity is. Now, the Prophet ﷺ was a master of his emotions. He felt emotions, but he was in charge of them. That's what emotional intelligence is. That not only are you in control of your own emotions, but you can also help the other person deal with theirs and regulate that. So an example is that Safiya radiallahu anha, she was the daughter of a Jew. And she became Muslim. And one day she was crying. She came to the Prophet ﷺ, and she said that Hafsa radiallahu anha told her that you are the daughter of a Jew. And that made her upset and she started crying. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? And the truth is she is, right? Her father is a Jewish person. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't come and brush it off. Like, oh, why are you upset? It's not a big deal. Don't make a big deal out of it. You shouldn't feel that way. Right? A lot of guys tell their wives how they should or should not feel. Right, sisters? Brothers, don't tell your women folk how to feel. And the opposite for sisters. A lot of sisters go and tell their husband, you should do it this way, you should do it this way, this will be better and stuff. Don't tell your husbands how to do things, right? Their fitrah is to be caretakers and take action. You can do it in a different way, but not in a critical way, because they take it as criticism, and women take those kind of comments as, he doesn't care about me. Right? Because men are fixers, but women, they need to express themselves to relieve that stress, especially women who are now working as well. Right? How many sisters, when you talk, you feel better? And how many sisters have husbands that when you talk, he starts telling you what to do? How many brothers do that to their wives? Okay? I'm going to tell you a golden thing. Well, we'll get into that, right? But the Prophet ﷺ, he told her, he's like, no. He's like, rather, you are the daughter of a prophet, your uncle is a prophet, and you are married to a prophet. So what does Hafsa have to boast over you? He said, Harun is our father, Musa is our uncle, and she's married to the Prophet ﷺ, the best of mankind. So what aspect does Hafsa have to boast over you? And then he goes to her and tells her, Ittaqillah, that's it. Right? Not only did he deal with the situation, but he empowered her. And three things that women want to feel is they want to feel heard, seen, and understood. So he did all these in that situation right there. He heard her, he made her feel seen and cared for, and he understood her. He didn't belittle the emotions that she was going through. Another example is in the Quran, it comes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because remember, he's a human being. He goes through the experiences that we go through as well. وَلَقَدْ نَعْلَمُ أَنَّكَ يَضِيقُ صَدْرُكَ بِمَا يَقُولُونَ. That we know that what these people are saying about you is causing you, your chest to constrain. It's causing you that anxiety. What does he tell him? Hufad, what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say next? فَسَبِّحْ بِحَمْدِ رَبِّكَ وَكُمْ مِنَ السَّاجِدِينَ. That praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, do dhikr, and be from amongst those who prostrate, which is salah, he's shifting his focus, he's shifting his language, and he's shifting his physiology. The Prophet ﷺ, whenever he was upset, whenever something would give him that fear, the first thing he would do was go to salah. Because that shifts your entire focus. You start thinking of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You start mentioning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that physical action also takes place there as well. So it changes the state. Now the next thing is, we need to cultivate an environment of being grateful. Regardless of where you are in your life, in your marriage, be grateful for where you are. The cards that you have been dealt are the best cards that you could possibly have, because it is the cards that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to you. But we need to cultivate that environment for gratitude. So you are exactly where you need to be. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith that whoever wakes up in the morning and is safe in their homes. How many people are safe in their homes? And are healthy in their bodies. How many people are healthy? And have their daily bread. How many people had food to eat today? It is as if the entire dunya is in front of them, has been brought to them. So we have to remind ourselves of these things. So I want you to think of 5 things that you value, respect, love about your spouse, and write them down. 5 things that you truly value, respect, and love about your spouse. That from your heart, 5 things you truly value, love, and respect about your spouse. I'll give you 3 minutes to write it. Usually I make people write 10 things. I'll give it 5 here. 5 things you truly, it doesn't matter if you've been married 20 years, 40 years, 1 year, 5 years. 5 things that you truly value, not those surface level compliments. You're so pretty, oh you're so handsome, you're a good mother. From your heart, 5 things that you truly value, love, and respect about your spouse. Anyone stuck? Think. Gotta think. Go into your heart. Allow yourself to go into your heart. 5 things you truly value, love about your spouse. For them loving your children? Yeah, you could value that. Who's got to 3 so far? MashaAllah. Sisters, who's got to 3? MashaAllah. All right, let's get to 4 and 5. You have to think. If I said think of 5 things you really hate about your spouse, how soon would we be able to list those qualities? So 5 things you value, respect, and love about your spouse. Anyone got to 5? MashaAllah. Oh, I got coffee here. 30 seconds. Let's get to 5. If you've already got to 5, keep going. Try to get to 10. Anyone not get to 5? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. Now here's my question. When is the last time you mentioned this to your spouse? When is the last time you actually mentioned this to your spouse? Who mentioned it today? 2 days ago? A week ago? A month ago? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. So we have to build an environment that these things are said on a regular basis. And allow it to come out. I really respect this about you. I really love this about you. I value what you bring to the table. Now, Dr. Gottman, who is considered one of the leading experts in the field of marriage. So he did this whole love lab and he studied couples for X amount of years and he decoded everything. And he said in his book, 7 Principles That Makes Marriage Work, that what can make marriage work is surprisingly simple. Happily married couples aren't smarter, richer, or more psychologically astute than others, but in their day-to-day lives, they have hit upon a dynamic that keeps their negative thoughts and feelings about each other, which all couples have, from overwhelming the positive ones. This statement that he's saying goes back to a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Does anyone know the hadith? The hadith is, a believing man should not hate a believing woman. And this goes both ways. If he dislikes one of her characteristics, he will be pleased with another. This goes both ways. $1,400 ago, the Prophet ﷺ told us about this hadith. But we have to train ourselves because the brain is going to look out for danger. It's going to look out for things that are wrong so that it protects ourselves from it. But we have to train ourselves to look for all the good that's there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Adiyat, He says, إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لِرَبِّهِ لَكَنُودٌ. He's describing insan. The nature of a human being is that they are ungrateful towards their Lord. And the scholars of tafsir, they mentioned some of them, that they said that when something goes wrong, they forget all the good that's still there. So we have to train ourselves and force ourselves to think of all the positives that are there, which means you have to actually sit down and count it out. And according to Dr. Gottman, he said that there has to be a positive to negative ratio. Because the negative things that happens in your lives, in your marriages, they're going to weigh more on your brain. How many people had like an amazing day and they thought about it 2 days later? Anybody? MashaAllah, tabarakallah. That's great. How many people had a terrible incident with their spouse and they thought about it 3 days later? Right? Because that's the nature of our psychology, that we focus on the negative weighs more on the mind. So he said that positive to negative ratio needs to be 5-to-1. For every negative interaction, we need to balance it by at least 5. Every negative interaction needs to be counterbalanced by at least 5 positive interactions. If it's really serious, then you need to do even more. So this is what the Prophet ﷺ ultimately is saying, that he'll be pleased with something else. So, but we have to force ourselves to think of not just 1, but 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at times to kind of make that shift. Now, regardless of the situation, how should we respond? There's one thing of dealing with the emotions, processing them. How should we ultimately respond? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَلَا تَسْتَوِي الْحَسَنَةُ وَلَا السَّيِّئَةُ, that the sin is not the same as the good deed. The good response is not the same as the bad response. And he says, إِدْفَعْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, that respond in a way that is better. فَإِذَا الَّذِي بَيْنَكَ وَبَيْنَهُ عَدَاوَةٌ كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. Now the context of this ayah is coming in a da'wah situation. that you're giving da'wah to people who reject the faith and are actually enemies towards you. And he's telling them that respond in a better way. Because when we become like that, and we're able to do that, what's the result? That person that you had enmity towards, that hates your guts, كَأَنَّهُ وَلِيٌّ حَمِيمٌ. He becomes like this dear friend to you. Now, if this is the case with an enemy, then what about your spouse? How will they? Shaykh Abdullah Shanqiti, he says of this verse, he says, كَأَنَّهُ يُصْبِحْ عَجِينٌ in your hands. Ajeen is dough, right? Am I translating correctly? Right? They become soft. You can do anything you want with them when you learn to respond in this way. But وَمَا يُلَقَّاهَا إِلَّا الَّذِينَ صَبَرُوا. That the people who get to experience this are those who are not patient but resilient. Sabr is not just being patient but also being resilient. That we have to respond time after time after time in this way. And this is what ihsan is. You cannot hate somebody that behaves this way. It's literally impossible. Sooner or later, it's going to melt them. It's going to break down their barriers if we train ourselves to respond in this way. And this is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to respond. And we take that same principle and apply it to our marriage. That this person that we love, that shares the same bed as us, that we have so much history, we've raised kids together with them, they've been with us through the difficult situations. We have to learn to respond in that way. Because if we do, we'll break the barriers. And it's enough for one person to do that. If both people do it, unbelievable. But if one person learns and masters how to respond like this, they will break down their barriers. Now comes pillar number 3, which is your relationship with your spouse. So the first 2 pillars are extremely important. That connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that connection with yourself as well. Because the stronger connection you have with Allah, that is supposed to translate in your own self-confidence, in your own thinking. If it doesn't translate, then something's going on here that we need to fix. So now comes I shouldn't say easy part, but now comes the part that you can learn the skill set of how to implement these things. We're going to be looking at human needs, love styles, communication, and conflict management. The 4 most important things when it comes to your relationship with your spouse. So the first thing is understanding human needs. Now this also goes back to your personal life as well, but because it's connected with the relationship, I'm putting it together. So if you're single, this also goes back. You want to look at this from your life. So according to human needs psychology, you have 6 core needs that you need to meet. And you're going to meet them in your life, in your relationships, at work. They play out in every realm. Because this is a marriage workshop, we're going to be looking at it within the marriage context. For those who are single, you want to look at it from your life perspective. Okay, this is very important. So you're going to look at it from your life. For those who are married, you're going to look at it within your marriage. So the first need is the need for certainty. The need to feel safe, secure, experience pleasure, avoid pain, have that predictability, that dependability. These are other words for certainty. Okay, are we clear on what certainty means? The next is the need for uncertainty. So the complete opposite of the first one. The need for adventure, for changing it up, for fun, for taking risks, for just having that sense of uncertainty there. So if you've ever met somebody who cannot hold down a job for a long period of time, it's because they have a very strong need for uncertainty. They can't deal with routine. They need to change things up. The third need is the need for significance. To feel important, to feel validated. And in a relationship, to feel important, to feel respected, to feel validated. This is significance. If you're single, then those 3 plus on top of that, achievement, success, so on and so forth. The fourth need is the need for love and connection. Because every human being we're social creatures. We want to be connected to other people. And in a relationship, to feel that love and that deep connection with that spouse. The fifth need is the need for growth. Because either we're growing or we're dying. Human beings are never just staying still. So growing, and you can define this in your relation however you want. Growing spiritually, growing in your health, growing in your communication, growing as parents, whatever you want to define it as, but growth, improvement. Intellectually growth, spiritual growth. And then finally you have contribution, which is the need to contribute to something that is greater than yourselves. So it's not about you, it's about something greater. This could be volunteering at the masjid together. This could be contributing towards each other. This could be volunteering at a soup kitchen, for example. But it's about something else, it's not about you. Now, you will never, ever find a couple who is meeting all these 6 needs at a high level, at an 8 or higher, wanting to leave that relationship. It doesn't happen. If you meet 2 out of these 6 needs at a high level, you have a connection with that person. If you meet 4 out of 6, you have a bond with that person. If you hit 6 out of 6 at a high level, at an 8 or higher, you have, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His permission, a beautiful marriage. Now what happens is people that have positive and negative vehicles of meeting these needs. There's positive ways to meet it, and that's ultimately what we need to aim for. And there's negative ways people meet these needs as well. So sometimes people, they meet their need for uncertainty through problems. Problems give them that spice in their life. If everything is perfect, it gets boring. So sometimes, subconsciously, we create problems. Because maybe we grew up with a lot of problems. Having that peace feels uncomfortable, so we need to create that. A negative way is that when a person feels disrespected, how they get their respect back. They lash out. Or they threaten with divorce. Right? People use these as weapons. I'm going to leave the relationship. That is a negative way to get control back in the relationship. And then what happens is when these needs are not getting met within the relationship, they're getting met somewhere else. Because you need to meet these needs. So what usually happens is for men, they, generally speaking, they gravitate more towards work. Because at work they're succeeding, they feel important, they're succeeding, they're building that connection with people. So it makes sense why they would overwork when they don't need to. Many times for women, when the needs are not getting met within the relationship, they move towards family. Because that family gives them that sense of love, of certainty, that they're always going to be there for them. So we need to be honest with ourselves and see that where am I gravitating towards if my needs are not getting met within my relationship. So a healthy life is that in your work, you're meeting these needs at a good level with your family members, with your spouse, with the community. But it doesn't need to be that because my relationship is struggling, I'm moving more towards other things. Now this is also where infidelity happens a lot. And if you look at celebrity scandals, why 2 people who have everything when it comes from a dunya perspective would do something like that? Is because their hierarchy of needs is very different. And we're going to uncover this. That when their most important needs, and most people, they gravitate towards 2 out of these 6 needs. And if they're not getting met, that means the relationship is in trouble. So a person could have a high sense of significance. And the wife, she has a high sense of uncertainty. She wants that fun. So her husband becomes that safe zone, but he's boring. And then the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not there. But she knows that, she loves him, and he's never going to leave her. But then comes the bad boy. And he brings that excitement that she really wants. And the taqwa is not there, so it makes sense why somebody would fall into that. For men, a key thing is respect for them. So when they don't feel respected within the home, and something that starts off as innocent, it can turn into, shaitan comes and does his dirty work, and it makes sense why somebody would fall into that. Not to say that it's okay, but it makes sense because the needs are not getting met, and when taqwa is not in the picture and shaitan comes and does his dirty work, something leads to another, and then that mistake happens. So now I want you to look at your relationship. Okay, you as an individual in your relationship, and if you're single in your life, I want you to put down what your top two needs are. So certainty, uncertainty, significance, so respect, validation, love and connection, growth, and contribution. So in your relationship, what is your most important need? The most important one. Now put down your second most important need. Your most important need and your second most important need. Everyone got it? Brothers, who has significance as their number one need? Sisters, who has certainty as their number one need? And who has love and connection as their number one need? My question is, do you need to feel certain in order to feel loved? That's your hierarchy. Or can you feel loved even though you're not certain? Brothers, who has other than significance? What's your number one need? Contribution. Okay, mashallah. How do you define contribution?
It's my own action.
Okay, so as long as you're giving and if you're not getting, is that still contribution?
No, I guess what perspective, I guess I'm asking, are you living from your perspective or the perspective of your spouse or both?
Now, how you define it? Contribution is when it's not about you. So you're still happy even though you might not getting your need.
Love and connection.
Okay, love and connection. Generally speaking, men gravitate towards significance. And women, there's a flip-flop, but usually between certainty and love and connection. But usually, generally speaking, it's certainty that comes first for them. Okay, now, once you put your top two, now you're going to rate your needs. So starting with your number one need, whatever it is, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you actually feel that need in your relationship? Okay, scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. How much do you actually experience that need? Now your number two need. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you experience that need in your relationship? For those who are single, in your life. So whatever that second need is, the most important one, how much do you actually experience it? This is subjective. So there's no right or wrong answer. Just be honest. How much do you actually experience it? You. There we go. Now the other four needs, just put them in any order. Whatever is left. So once again, it's certainty, uncertainty, significance, love and connection, growth, and contribution. So the other four, put in any order. And then rate the third one. On a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you experience that need in your relationship? Now the fourth need, how much do you experience that on a scale from 1 to 10? Fifth need, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much are you experiencing that need in your relationship? And then finally, your sixth need, how much on a scale from 1 to 10 are you meeting that need in your relationship? Now I have a question for you. What is missing in this framework? What's missing, guys? Sisters?
The other person, how they rate them.
No, that's fine. There's a seventh need. And we uncovered it the first exercise we did. What's the seventh need? The seventh need is your connection with Allah. That's the need of your soul. That's the need of your heart. So you want to rate, on a scale from 1 to 10, how connected do you feel to Allah? Now we're going to look at, we're not going to go through all 6, but you want to do this for all 6. Because of time, we can't go through all 6. We're going to look at least the first and second need. Because those are your most important ones. So questions. What needs to happen in order for you to feel that need being met? This is the golden question. What needs to happen in order for you to feel that need being met? And anytime you're stuck and you don't know what's going on, ask your spouse what needs to happen in order for this to be resolved. And if they say, I don't know, then they're not thinking of the solution. So we want to become solution focused. So what needs to happen in order for you to feel this need being met? You want to put down 3 ways. So whatever your number 1 need is, what needs to happen in order for the need to get met? Because now you're creating, every single person has rules for their needs. The thing is, people don't know those rules. Our spouse doesn't know those rules. And many times you meet couples who have separated, and they say, I did everything for that person. And we believe them because they're being honest. They actually feel that they did everything they could. But perhaps they didn't do what their spouse actually needed. And this is where the rules comes in. That you are unwrapping their blueprint. So you're making marriage easier. You are helping your spouse meet your needs because you have a rule of how that need needs to get met. They have an idea, not an idea, they have an assumption of how that need should get met. But it's not what actually gets the need met for you. So you need to uncover this rule. So 3 ways what needs to happen in order for you to feel this need being met. Now, the next thing is, how can you actually generate that need by yourself? Okay? So I feel this need when I do, think, feel what? So we need to be able to generate this need by ourselves as well, this feeling, whatever it could be, the need for respect. How can I generate that by myself? That need for certainty, for love. How can I generate that by myself when I do something, when I think a certain way, when I feel a certain way? Think of 3 things. Going back to the first question, what you wrote down in terms of what needs to happen in order for you to feel this need, how many people's answer had everything to do with their spouse? are you just not raising your hand because you don't like me, or? So the question was that how many people's answer for the first question, what needs to happen in order for you to feel this need, how many things did you write down? Everything was dependent on the other person doing something. Everything was on them doing something? Okay. That's fine, there's no right or wrong answer, but one thing to be mindful of is that if everything is dependent on the other person, it becomes very easy to not feel that need. So you want to create a balance. So you're helping your spouse also understand these rules that you have, but at the same time, this is where this part comes in, that what can I do that will generate that feeling? So for example, if I want to feel loved, what can I do that will make me feel loved? What can I do that will give me that sense of certainty? And this is where that spiritual connection is so important. Because that certainty will only come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It will never come from anyone else. When that connection with Allah is strong, you're automatically loved. Because He is Al-Wadud. You're automatically respected because nobody can take it away because you're Abdul Rahman. You automatically have certainty because وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. He's enough. Even though I don't know what's going to happen in the future, I know that Allah is going to take care of me. When Allah is number one, you're always going to be growing. When Allah is number one, there's so many ways to connect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when He's number one, you're always going to be contributing. Because that's part of the deen. It's not about me. It's about me and other people as well. Right? So we want to think, how can I generate that feeling by myself? Then the third thing is, I want him or her to do or make me feel this way by doing, saying, feeling what? Right? That reassurance, what does it look like? Right? A lot of the sisters have this need for certainty. For the brothers, most people gravitate towards significance. How can they do that for you? By doing, saying, feeling what? Write it down. And then share it with your spouse. This is a blueprint. You're making it easier for them. But we say, oh, they should just know. How are they going to know? Right? So we want to make it easier. So I want him, her, to make me feel this need by doing, saying, feeling. Well, feeling doesn't really count, but doing, saying what? What can they do for you to show you that respect? What can they say to you? How can they give you that certainty? How can they give you that feeling of love? Now you want to think, how can you make them feel that? So I make him, her feel this need when I do what? What can I do to help them feel that need? So I want you to write down the answers for this and then actually run it by your spouse. That if I were to do this, would that give you the need for whatever? Respect or certainty or love, whatever your number one need is. These needs are the most important component when it comes to your marriage. If you hit 6 out of 6 and add the spiritual aspect to it as well, at a high level, you will, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have a beautiful marriage. And everyone can hit that level. When I work with people or couples, they come to me and they're like at 2s and 3s, especially for the top 2 needs. And within 2 to 3 months, they start at 7s and 8s, they're there. Because you make it easier, you're uncovering these rules that the other person has absolutely no idea about. But when people are actually genuine and they actually want the best, you make it easier and then you're able to give them what they actually need from you. Now looking at all your rules, I want you to be honest. Are your rules too difficult? Are they too difficult for your spouse to meet? look at your rules, and be honest. Are they too difficult? Some people have a rule that in order for me to be happy, I need to be making $1 million. I need to be 10% body fat. My kids need to be the best. My wife can never talk back to me and stuff. Which means you're never going to experience that. Right? For men who have the need for significance, if you have a rule that she can never object to my opinion, guess what? It's going to be very hard for you to feel that. Right? So be honest with yourselves and look at your rules. Can you make it easier? Because remember, you can generate this need all on your own. When you're in marriage, you want them to do that for you. Right? That's why it's a marriage, it's a partnership. But you can generate this need on your own. So can you make it easier to feel this need? This number one need that you have, can you make it easier to feel? And the best thing is a healthy balance where you're generating this need on your own, but then you're also sharing with your spouse what they can do to help you meet that need as well. That's a good balance. When everything is dependent on the other person, it's going to be very easy to not feel that need because you don't have a way to generate on your own. But you want to have that healthy balance where it's like you can generate on your own, but because you are in a relationship, that they can also help you generate that need as well. Asr Iqama is 4 o'clock? Okay, inshallah. So we'll take a break, inshallah, and then we'll continue the rest, inshallah. So these questions that's there in the workbook, I want you to actually do it for all your 6 needs. But start with the top 2, okay? Because those are the most important ones. And then build on that as well. So for this week, uncover your top 2 needs, the rules for them. Then actually go and share with your spouse and try to meet them, whatever the number is. If they're like an 8 or higher, excellent. That's great. If they're lower than that, then raise it up a little bit. Try to move it to a 7 or an 8. Then after Salah, we'll come back and we'll continue, inshallah. But this is very important because this is the key for your relationship. Everything else is going to help you build on this. But these are the keys. That if you meet these 6 needs and also your spiritual connection as 8 or higher, you will have a very beautiful, fulfilled life. Because based on this theory, they say that the certainty, uncertainty, significance, and love are more of the human bodily needs. The spiritual needs is growth and contribution and love as well. But for us, there's another one, which is that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So even they understand that there's a spiritual aspect to this as well, but they haven't got the entire picture correct. So uncover your rules for your top 2 needs and then actually go out and actually do something about it, where you start implementing. And you make it easier this way for your spouse to succeed and for yourself to succeed as well. So inshallah, we'll break for Salah and then we'll come back and continue, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
Assalamu alaikum. For those of us who've been with us since Dhuhr, there's refreshment in the room and the lobby, so help yourself, inshallah.
أقم الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله بسم الله سو صفوفكم الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر سمع الله لمن حمده الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. استغفر.
Assalamu alaikum. Let's settle down. We'll start soon, inshallah.
So he turned it off instead of turning it on. It was off. See the switch? That was muted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So get him start walking. All right, assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome back, inshallah. We'll go for about another hour, inshallah. We'll try to wrap up. Just some final words on these human needs. These are extremely important because they determine your level of marital satisfaction. The more needs you're meeting at a higher level through positive vehicles, the more fulfilled and satisfaction you will feel within your marriage. Now, whenever there's conflict, your top two needs are going to get impacted the most. Conflict, there's a need behind it that's not getting met. That's what's creating that conflict there. Now, what usually happens is there's a cycle that takes place. When people are meeting their spouse's top two needs, then they usually are reciprocating and they're meeting their spouse's needs as well. So for example, let's look at love being the number one need for the female and respect being the number one need for the husband. When he feels respected, he's showing love. When she feels loved, she shows respect. Now what happens during conflict? He does not feel respected, so he doesn't show love. She doesn't feel loved, she's not showing respect. And you can switch these needs with other needs, whatever the needs are. What is ihsan? Ihsan is that when she does not feel loved, she's still showing respect. When he does not feel respected, he is still showing love. That is the higher level, and that's what we need to try to get to. And another thing that we have to be honest is we need to look and see that is there any negative vehicles that I'm utilizing to meet a need? So for example, problems happen, right? Sometimes we create the problems because there's needs that are getting met through that. And we have to be honest that when problems happen, what needs am I meeting through this? Am I getting that variety in there? Am I getting certainty from it? That when there's problems, I know that my spouse is going to respond to me. Am I utilizing it to connect through them to it? That when there's problems, I know that the person is going to connect with me. So this becomes now a negative vehicle because you're meeting 3 needs out of the 6 through this negative vehicle. When we start meeting 3, 4 needs from a negative vehicle, it becomes very hard to let go of that. Because why are you going to let go of it? Because it's meeting so much of your needs. So you have to replace it with a positive vehicle. You have to find more positive ways to meet those needs for yourself and for your spouse as well. So for this week, you want to go back and focus on the top 2 ones and look at your rules and make them easier so that you can succeed and your spouse can also succeed in giving you what you need. And don't be afraid to make mistakes, right? You learn from this. You go, okay, it doesn't work out, let me reevaluate and see what my needs are. Then also get creative as well. Think of new ways to meet your spouse's needs, right? This gives you a blueprint, but it's not the entire blueprint. You can expand on it. So be creative. Think of new ways that you can show them love, that you can show them respect, that you can give them that certainty. And then see if it gets met. If it doesn't, don't feel bad. It doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that that didn't work. So we learn new ways. So this gives you more tools in your arsenal to meet your spouse's needs and get your needs met as well. Now, who's heard of love languages? All right, I'm sure everyone has heard of love languages. I'm going to take it to a higher level where we talk about love styles. So this has to deal with your personality. And sometimes, you feel like, oh, we're so opposite. The things that I love, the person doesn't like to do, and the things that they like, I don't like to do. Now, it's not a problem because opposites, they attract. But when it comes to understanding styles, it does require that we are able to expand our range a little bit. But before that, we have to understand what our love styles are. So similar to love languages, you might have different languages, but when you understand what the person's language is, we should try to meet that language and they meet our language as well. So the first one is the playful and light lover. This person is full of energy. They can change the mood like that. Everything is an adventure to them. Everything is lighthearted, joking around. Let's go do something fun. But a drawback of this style is, and I want you to notice that, look, there's positive aspects to this style, for every style, and there's also negative aspects to it. So a negative aspect the person can't read the room. There's not this time to make jokes. Maybe it's time for you to get serious and actually pay attention to what's happening. A negative quality could be for this be that this person, when they are unable to lift that person up, they go and they do something else ignoring this person. Because for them, everything needs to be fun and enjoyable. But life is not like that. There's going to be difficulties where our spouse needs us to step up and be more serious. Then you have the passionate lover. And the passionate lover only cares about, right? So they miss out on other ways to connect with their spouse because there's so many other ways that you can be intimate with them aside from the actual physical action. So this is how they show their love, but they are missing out on other ways to connect with their spouse. Then you have the religious lover. This person, wants to go to the halaqah, wants to listen to lectures together, wants to pray qiyam al-layl together, which is all great. That's amazing. But sometimes, the spouse is not at that level. And pressuring them could turn them away. So we have to understand that, okay, what things can we do and what things maybe give them some time to do their own thing that they're not ready for at the moment. Then you have the earthy, steady, and grounded, the quiet lover. The one who doesn't say much, but they're always there. You need a shoulder to lean on, I'm here. An ear to listen to, I'm here. And this might be a lot of men, but not necessarily all men. It can even be women as well. But this person, a drawback is, this person can be extremely boring. They don't want to do anything fun. They don't want to go out, change it up. It's like, no, just stay at home, put on a movie. You can talk, I'll listen, right? It gets boring, so we need to expand our range a little bit. Person who identifies with this style needs to expand a little bit. Then you have the adventurous lover. Let's go travel, let's go for adventures, hiking, skydiving, these kind of risky things. They always want to go on an adventure. Sometimes, they could pressure their spouse into doing something that they're not comfortable with. So each style has a positive aspect, but they also have negative aspects as well. Then you have the driven and goal-oriented lover. So the planner. Everything needs to be planned out. What are we going to be doing the next year, 2 years, 5-year plan? What's our marriage going to look like? What's our financial plan going to look like? What's our day going to look like? And this is great because the person is planning for the future, but a drawback is that they miss out on the moment. Because they're so focused on the future that they're missing out on living in the moment. Those small things that takes place between families, they're missing out on that. Then you have the inner geek. Now this is not a bad thing, but this person likes to, very academic. They want to talk about academia and sci-fi and all these other kind of things. It's very interesting to them. And that's how, they get excited and they show love in that way. So it's based on their personality. And once again, this is not something negative, right? It's just that's their personality. Then you have the best friend lover, the one who's there, who cares for them, who's like a best friend. Whenever you need them, they're there for you. But a drawback is this person could, intimacy could be lacking here, because that friendship becomes there, that they want to avoid problems, that they don't want to disappoint their partner, so they avoid sharing what they're actually feeling. And that could kind of create depolarization, that they become more like buddies rather than lovers, if they don't expand their range. Then you have the fixer. So this is like the therapist lover, that they're there to listen. Okay, what's the problem? Let me help you. I'm here. Okay, this is what we can do to change it around. So this person is always looking at things from a fixing perspective. But what happens is when their spouse doesn't have a problem anymore, now they can't connect with them. So they go and they find other people to connect with. Let me find, my family member, do they have a problem? Does my cousin have a problem? Do my kids have problems that I can listen to them and help them? Then you have, finally, the social lover. This person wants to have parties and go out and attend events, just to be around people. And a drawback could be, especially if they're married to a quiet lover, that the person is there, but they're not included. All right, so going back to the styles once again. So you want to identify the top 3 styles that you identify with, because you're probably going to identify with multiple styles. Now you want to pinpoint the top 3 ones. So playful and light, the passionate lover, the religious lover, the quiet lover, the adventurous lover, the planner, the inner geek, the best friend, the fixer, and the social lover. So questions, what are your top 3 styles? So identify your top 3. You probably have more, but stick with 3.
And is this what you're looking for or what you identify with?
What you identify with. What's your personality when it comes to your love style? If your spouse is here, then later on share your answers with them. If they're not here, try to identify what their styles are as well. And you can tell by their personality. We got top 3 styles down?
Can you go over them again?
So you have the playful and light lover, you have the passionate lover, the religious lover, the quiet lover, the adventurous lover, the planner, the inner geek, the best friend, the fixer, and the social lover. Okay, so what are your top 3 love styles? Now I want you to think, what are the strengths of your styles? Okay, so what are the strengths of that style? And if your spouse is now here, I want you to identify their styles as well and think of what are the strengths of their style as well. I'll give you a minute. So identify your strengths when it comes to your style. And if your spouse is not here, then try to identify their strengths as well. Based on what you think is their top 3 styles, what would be their strengths? And if you can't think of a strength, then when you go home, ask your spouse, what do you think my strength is when it comes to this style? So they can also help you identify that strength. Now the next thing is, what are some possible challenges about your love style? What would be some of the weaknesses of your style, and what can you do to improve it? Because now what happens is, how many people think they have complete opposite styles to their spouse? Okay? And that's fine. But it does require you to expand your range. So it's not about I always do what I want to do and the other person gets left out. We always want to think win-win. Okay? Win-win is the mentality. How can I get, but at the same time, how can they get as well? So this requires us to expand our range a little bit. Not to do something that you're completely uncomfortable with. So for example, you have the adventurous lover, then you have the quiet lover. This guy wants to go skydiving. There's no way that this other person is going to do that. Right? So that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about expanding your range that, okay, what could be a middle ground that the person will enjoy? It could be turns. For example, if there's an inner geek with the planner, or the playful and light with the planner. The playful and light usually is like not organized at all. How can they expand their range a little bit where the planner feels that comfort, that okay, I don't have to always be worrying about me taking that responsibility. So we have to be able to expand the range a little bit so that both people feel that their personalities will complement each other, even though it's opposite. Okay, so what are some possible challenges of your style and what can you do to improve it? Now this is just a framework, right? So what are other ways that you show love? In what other ways do you show your love as well to your spouse? You could have like a hybrid of styles or a completely different style that we didn't talk about. So what are other ways that you show love to your spouse or you experience love? Because every single person has the ability to expand their range. Right? We can become better at conversation. We can become better at adventure. We can become better at planning. We can become better at intimacy. We can also be lighthearted at times. We all have that ability to expand the range. The question comes down to, do we want to or not? So what are challenges? What can you do to improve it? And what are other ways that you show your love? So you also want to look at your strengths as well, how you demonstrate love, especially in difficult situations. How can you do that? Ignore this question, but going to the last one, that knowing this now, what can you do to give to them? So knowing your partner's style, understanding your strengths and your shortcomings, what can you do to meet their style as well? So what can you do to give to them? Knowing this now, what can you do to give to them? Think of like one or two things. One or two things that you can do knowing their style, your strengths, your shortcomings, that you can do to give to them. Now we're going to look at effective communication. This is one of the most important aspects when it comes to a relationship. And most people, nobody's born a great communicator. but it is something that we can definitely learn. But there's some principles that need to be in place to make sure that we're communicating effectively. The first thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, وَقُلْ لِعِبَادِي يَقُولُوا الَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَنزَغُ بَيْنَهُمْ إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ كَانَ لِلْإِنسَانِ عَدُوًّا مُبِينًا. That tell my believing slaves to say that which is best. Right? Many times you hear a complaint that, hey, it's not what you said, but it's how you said it. So this is very important that we choose the words carefully. Also, tone of voice is very important. Timing is very important. At times, it's just not the right time to have that conversation. Because what happens is when we say something and it comes off in the wrong way, who's doing the dirty work? It's shaitan, because he comes and he starts whispering in their hearts. What did they mean by this? How could they say something like that? They don't care about you. And that thought is planted in the head, and if we don't take control of that by saying A'udhu Billah or changing our state or giving it a different meaning, then we run with it. And that thought is going to lead to a negative feeling. That negative feeling ultimately is going to create a negative action. The negative action is going to create a negative result. So the first thing is one asks ourselves, what's my goal? If I'm going to address my spouse with something, what's my goal? If it's a positive goal, good, but there's still a second step. How am I approaching them? Is it in a constructive way or not? Is it unconstructive or is it constructive? If the goal is good, but if it's unconstructive, don't say anything. It's better to be quiet than to say something. Right? Goes back to the hadith we talked about. مَنْ كَانَ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ فَلْيَقُلْ خَيْرًا أَوْ لِيَصْمُتْ. Now we're applying this practically. How can we actually apply this hadith in our lives, in our marriages? If the goal is a good goal, but the way I'm about to go about it is not good, don't say anything. لِيَصْمُتْ. Be quiet in this situation until you can figure out a constructive way to bring it up. And this is where the questions comes up, that you can address them. Hey, there's something I need to discuss with you. Is this a good time? There's something on my mind. I need to discuss this. Very important to me. When is a good time for us to discuss it? Sometimes you just need to book an appointment with them because it's important to you. But if it comes out in the moment and it comes out in a harsh way, then it's not going to bring about the desired result. So this is what Dr. Gottman, he calls harsh startup, where it starts off at a very harsh tone, you statements, the criticism comes out. So usually you can tell within the first 3 minutes where the conversation is going. So if it starts off harsh, you always do this, that criticism is going to lead to defensiveness. And then you just create a cycle, which means nothing gets resolved. So we need to avoid harsh startup as much as possible. And this is what we call gentle startup. We'll get to that. Right? Sometimes, don't you see what I'm doing? What's wrong with you? That right away, conversation out the window. Because that triggers something within the other person, and they're going to be defensive, and once again you create a cycle. Unless a person has a high level of emotional control, which we worked on the first session. If a person has that, they know that something's going on here. So, okay, let me give it a different meaning. Maybe they're frustrated. Maybe something's important to them. Maybe I just have not been paying attention to them. So let me give them the time and see what happens. But usually, they will create a negative result. And we want to avoid that. So this is where comes the 4 horsemen. So Dr. Gottman, he can sit with a couple for 15 minutes, and with 90% accuracy, he can predict divorce based on these 4 things. Especially contempt. So if these 4 things are there, he can predict within 90% accuracy if they're going to separate in the future or not. So the first thing of the first of the horsemen is criticism. When you are attacking the person's personality. You always, you never, you don't care about me, you are like this. You have issues, you need to resolve it. The attack is going directly to the person's personality, not the situation. So this is where gentle startup comes in. where you are describing your frustration with the situation and not the person. So how we do this is we use I statements. You're describing your feelings when it comes to the situation. And you have to know what you're feeling. So instead of saying, you are making me angry, you are frustrating me, you are annoying me, you would say, I feel, or we never connect anymore. You don't care about me, us going out. I feel disconnected. You are taking full responsibility for that feeling. I feel disconnected. So the first thing is using I statements to describe what you feel. Then you state what you need in a positive way. And then you thank them for that. So for example, there's guests coming and there's still a whole bunch of things happening and you're panicking. And this goes for both parties. That you would say that, hey, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now, that we're not going to be ready in time. I need you, or please, I need you to do this. And then you thank them for that. So you show them appreciation for what you did. So they feel as if they succeeded in helping you. So the more we appreciate and validate, the more they are willing to help out. But when they do something and there's no validation, there's no thank you involved, then they're like, why am I even bothering at times? So don't underestimate the power of a thank you. So once again, gentle startup. I feel, regarding the situation, not regarding you, but I feel disconnect. I feel frustrated. I feel upset. I feel overwhelmed. Right? So we have to be able to identify what the feeling is. Then, I need you. Right? Would you please do this? So this is where you get specific. So you're helping them succeed. Because, okay, the situation is tense, rather than punch them under the ground, help them succeed. Give them a clear task they can do that will help out the situation. And then thank them for it. So I feel this, would you please do this? Would you mind taking care of the kids? Would you mind doing this? Whatever it is, be specific so that they can succeed. Make it easier for them to succeed, and then thank them for that, so that they'll be willing to do it in the future as well. Then you have defensiveness. So the antidote for that is to take responsibility even a little bit. So instead of getting defensive, and this is where a level of that mindfulness of Allah comes in. Where if my spouse is continuously telling me a certain thing, let me look and actually see that, okay, is it actually there? Right? Maybe in the moment it gets heated, but when you get some time, actually look at it. That, is it actually there? So instead of getting defensive, we can take responsibility that, okay, you know what? Yes, maybe I did react. Maybe I did do this. How can I be better in the future? So I want to take responsibility even if it's a little bit. Then comes contempt. Contempt, and this is the worst of them. Because not only is it problematic, this also points towards a spiritual disease in the heart. Because this is saying that I'm better than you. That's what contempt is, that you feel that you are better than this person. And how can you be with a person that you don't respect? That you think you're better than, that you think is stupid, for lack of a better word. It becomes very hard to love and show respect to that person. So not only is it problematic, but it's also a spiritual disease, where this is like pride coming out. So we need to work on that. So over here it says, describe your own feelings and needs. Rather, the more accurate one is to look at the positive qualities that they have. Yes, sister? Of contempt? So a scenario could be somebody's talking, like they roll their eyes and they're like, you just don't get it. They don't want to listen. You don't understand. This is not your business. This is above your intellectual level. So this is like contempt, like belittling them. That, like not even giving them the chance to be involved in that area and stuff. This is not your area, just leave it off, you don't get it, You haven't studied this field, I know how to deal with situations. So that's them, it's like you're looking down on that individual. So this is very dangerous because not only is it a problem when it comes to a relationship, but it's indicative of a spiritual disease that's in the heart, which is ujub and kibr at the same time. So you have this self-conceit and then pride, which you think you're better than the other person. But that person could be, just as their opinion can be just as valid or even better at times. But if we're not even willing to give them that benefit of the doubt, it's going to create a problem, which eventually is going to lead them to kind of start disconnecting from each other. So in this situation, we need to think of their positive qualities, right? To humble ourselves and look for the good that that person has, because they have a lot of good there. And then you have stonewalling. So stonewalling is usually when the situation gets so tense that your heart rate has reached a level there you cannot think rationally anymore. You're emotionally flooded. And men do this more than women do it, where they just become silent. Right? Have you ever noticed this? All of a sudden they're just like zoned out. They're not even paying attention. It's going one ear, coming out the other. So this is stonewalling. Their heart rate has gone up so high where they emotionally or cannot be present anymore. So they go into that in terms of a coping mechanism. So when this happens, we need to take a time out and go and breathe. Self-soothe, where you can then come back maybe 20 minutes later and then constructively look at the situation. And this is also where it's important, where you have code words that you go back to. One of the greatest words to utilize in your relationship is when things are getting intense is ouch. Laura Doyle, she uses this she has a book that she's written. She says the word ouch. When you feel things are getting out of control and you're feeling your emotions are getting hurt, just use the word ouch. There's a code word between you that lets your spouse know that is getting too much. You cannot use the word after you have slaughtered them and then they say something, ouch. Right? That's not the place for it. You have to use it in the beginning. When you start feeling that, okay, things are getting a little bit out of hand, ouch, so that we can reset. So both individuals, and you can choose a different word as well, it's up to you, but this is a good way to kind of keep things in check when things start getting out of control. But once again, you cannot use it after you already start bashing them. Then it's too late. Now this one we'll go for in conflict management. But now this is an exercise that you want to utilize. It's called the feedback wheel. So the steps of this, now something happened, you want to address it with your spouse. How can you help them and empower them, rather than throwing them under the bus? So the steps for this is, number one, you want to ask your partner if they're willing to listen first and foremost. Something happened, you were upset, they came home, maybe they reacted, they scolded the children, or they were extremely angry. Ask them if they're willing to listen. The second thing is, remember, your motivation is that you love them. This person is the mother of your children, the father of your children, your companion that you chose to marry. Nobody forced you to marry this person. You chose to marry this person. So your intention is that you love them. Now, you want to follow the following steps. So you want to say what you saw, heard about the event factually. Okay? And you want to state this in a way that a camera can capture it. The camera can capture, you came home, you opened the door, and you raised your hand like this towards the child. The camera will not capture, you came home and you just are just miserable individual and you raise your hand because you want to take your anger out on the child. The camera is not capturing any of that. That is what we've added on top of it. Okay? So factual. You want to say what you heard from a factual perspective, like a news reporter. You came home, you opened the door, you raise your hand. Now comes the next thing. What have you made up about that story? So this is where you're going to put all your emotions and story behind it. So I made up about it that you don't care, you have anger issues, you need some childhood trauma to be resolved, you're just a miserable person. So this is you adding stuff to that. So the person cannot get defensive because they know that you're not saying that's the reality, you're saying this is what you made up about it. So you're taking full responsibility for the story you're projecting onto them. Okay, so what you saw and heard from a factual perspective, what a camera can capture. The second is the story that you're putting on top of it. The third is how you actually feel about it. I feel scared, I feel worried, I feel This. Feelings, remember, are one word. Right? It's not a belief, it's a feeling. I feel scared, I feel worried, I feel stranded, I feel hurt, I feel anger. So this is what you want to say, you know, I feel about it, I'm worried, I'm scared, I'm uncertain, I feel unloved, right? And then you give them a constructive way of what you would like for them to do. Right? So you're telling them, now you tell your own story, right? I made about that, you know, you have some issues that you need to resolve. This. I think you need to, you know, take some time for yourself. You need to get in a better place. You need to focus more on your spirituality. So you give them something that they can actually do. And then let go of the outcome. This is where you put your trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You brought it up in a good way, and let go of the outcome. And bi'idhnillah, they will respond to your request. Because we didn't attack them. Because what happens usually is a negative event happens and we bash them. So they're already down and we put them even lower. So we want to help them actually. So this is where responsibility comes in. That you take that time with them, that hey, there's something happened, I need to speak with you. Remember your ultimate purpose, factually what you saw, then add all the story on top of it. So that the person that you're speaking to knows that this is what's going on in your world. And to you that is very realistic, that's very real to you. To them it might not be real, but to you it's very real, and this way they can see that look, this is what happened, this is what they're making of the situation. And a genuine good person will be mindful of that okay, this is what they're worried, they're scared, that's not my intention, okay, what can I do to make it better? And you give them steps that they can follow. And then let go of the outcome. And bi'idhnillah, they'll respond in a positive way. The last part we're going to look at is conflict management. Conflict is going to happen. Anytime you take people from two different environments, two backgrounds, whether they're both are Arabs, both are Desi, both are from the same cultural background, they're still different. They have different upbringings in their homes. They think differently. Men and women think differently. They have different backgrounds, different cultures, which means when you put them together, you're going to have conflict at times. The Prophet ﷺ himself had conflict with his spouses. And that's okay, because conflict is growth waiting to happen. It's a chance to take your relationship to a higher level. It's a chance to understand your spouse on a deeper level. Maybe they have some hurts from the past that's led them to shut down. But when conflict happens and we attack them, that makes them shut down even more, close off even more. But if we deal with it more effectively, these hurts come out. And we can have empathy and understand with them and take that relationship to a higher level. More understanding, more care. But there's a way to go about it. So conflict, there's some growth waiting to happen. There's a chance for you to take your relationship to a higher level. There's a chance for you to understand your spouse on a deeper level. And usually there's a need that's not getting met when conflict is happening. So if you understand human needs, you can trace it back. Okay, what need is not happening? And these needs play out differently in different relationships. With in-laws, there's a relationship, there's a need that your spouse has when it comes to her relationship with her in-laws, and for the man's relationship with his in-laws as well. And the need could be different, totally different. So try to understand what the need is, and then uncover their rules and give them what they are, or what can make it easier. So some skills for conflict management. So Gottman, he says that you want to use gentle startup, accept influence, right? Take an influence. Your spouse is an adult. They are well educated. They are good individuals. So accept influence for them. Make effective repairs during conflict. So a word like ouch is a repair attempt. Saying that, hey, I feel things are getting out of control. Can we take a time out? That's a repair. I think we're getting sidetracked. That's a repair attempt. Can we take a time out? That's a repair attempt. So you want to be repairing. I feel that you feel I'm criticizing you. All right, so you're taking responsibility, you're repairing that. What is it about this situation that's making you react this way? All right, so you want to become a master when it comes to repairing these conflicts. Then de-escalate quarrels as well. Compromise, meaning how can both people come to an agreement that works best for them. And do self-soothing for yourself and your partner as well. So I'm going to add to this that learn to discover what need is being unmet and what needs to happen in order for it to be met. All right, that's the golden question. What needs to happen in order for this to be resolved? You feel unstuck. What needs to happen in order for you to feel unstuck, if you feel stuck? If you feel ignored, what needs to happen in order for you to feel seen? Because this forces you to think about a solution. And your brain will react accordingly. If we tell ourselves that, oh, they don't care and they don't want to do the best and so on and so forth, then brain will accept that and just leave it at that. But if we ask the right questions, now we have to start thinking of a solution. What would make it better? What would be ideal here? How can I help? Right? These questions forces the both of you to think of a solution rather than go deeper into the issue itself. And then finally, emotional mastery. If you can master that aspect where you're able to remain calm in the face of a storm, you will be able to transform your relationship bi'idhnillah. So the first thing is avoid harsh startup. So once again, conflict, avoid that at all costs. Now you have two types of problems according to Gottman. You have solvable. If somebody just did something, it will take care of the problem. Then you have, according to him, what is perpetual problems, something that is consistent. So in his research, he found that many couples, 6 years later, they still have the same issues. But they have a way of actually talking about it. So that's better than being stuck in this situation. So sometimes you might have two completely different viewpoints, and people are not seeing eye to eye, so it's a perpetual problem. So you want to move them towards becoming more, or at least having a conversation in regards to it. Now, I would say that if people learn how to find out the need behind it and understand the rules for the person and be able to come to an agreement between them, you can also deal with perpetual problems as well. But it does require a skill set. So this is the Gottman conflict blueprint. Now in the workbook, it actually gives you the entire details of how this plays out. Okay? So because your spouse is not in front of you or you're not sitting beside them, you can't actually have this, but I'm going to break it down for you so that you can actually go and implement it. So these are very important because it will help you in dealing with conflict. Because conflict is a normal part of marriage. It's how we deal with it that determines ultimately the result. So you have the Rappaport intervention. So this is about understanding. This one you utilize when there's small issues there, when there's misunderstandings. Because most problems happen because of misunderstandings. Somebody said something, it was interpreted in a certain way, that made them feel something, they reacted in a certain way, and then you have this big problem in front of you. Right? So if you want to understand the situation better, you will utilize this exercise for smaller issues. The aftermath of a fight or regrettable incident is utilized when something's already happened. An incident happened, both people said stuff to each other, it was regrettable. How can we go and process it in a way without getting back into it so that it does not happen in the future, and how can we learn from it? So this is when this exercise comes in. Then you have the dreams within conflict. So this is when two people don't see eye to eye on a certain issue. It could be when it comes to finances. It could be in regards to the kids. It can be in regards to which house to buy, for example, or what should we do in regards to extended family. So this is where you utilize the dreams within conflict to uncover the dream. So before any type of solving, there has to be a level of understanding. We have to understand the other person's perspective, what they're going through, before we can come to a solution. This is very important. Understanding precedes solving. And then finally, you come to the compromise and problem solving, that where both people can come to a happy medium that works best for the relationship. Not for our own egos, but for the relationship, the greater good. So the first thing is the Rappaport exercise. So one of the keys of communication is listening and validating. Many times instead of listening, we are thinking of how we can respond in our heads. So the person is talking, and we're going through, okay, how can I respond back to them? no, that's not true, that's not true. They're telling this in our head. Then we cut them off and we actually tell them, no, this is what happened, so on and so forth. So we have to also learn how to listening. Listening means to listen to the other person. Let them say everything they need to say. And let me understand what they're going through, and then repeat it back to them to demonstrate that, did I actually get it? So this is the Rappaport exercise that you utilize when it comes to smaller issues, or if there's a misunderstanding. So the speaker, the rules are that you use I statements. You say why something is important to you. I feel this is important to me because I have a dream, or I need this, or I'm afraid of something. And then you say what you would like to happen in a positive way. So once again, I would appreciate if you could do this. And then you show that appreciation by saying thank you, by giving them a hug, by giving them a kiss, right? By doing something nice for them afterwards. So you show that appreciation, that it was recognized. The listener, your role becomes, and this is laid out in the workbook actually, the exact steps that you can follow. So the listener asks questions for more clarity. Why is that important to you? What would be ideal here? How can I help? Right? So ask questions to take the conversation deeper. Questions are a great way for having great conversations, to getting the other person to open up. And then repeat back what you hear. So let the person speak, and then repeat back. What I'm hearing is that this is important to you because of this reason. Because you want to feel a certain way, or you're afraid of a certain something. And then the one who's speaking, acknowledge if they actually got it or not. So the listener, you summarize what you heard, and then the speaker acknowledges whether or not it was correct or not. And then the listener, you want to validate their feelings. If this is what you're feeling through, I understand why it's difficult for you. Oh, that must be really difficult. Oh, that sucks. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make it easy for you. Right? So these are words or statements of validation. Validate what they're going through, because to them, you don't have to agree with it, but to them it's very real what's happening. But when we kind of just brush it off and like it doesn't exist, as if they're living in this completely different reality and stuff, to them it is reality, even though we might not necessarily agree with it. But before getting to solving, we have to understand and validate their position, and that they feel understood, and then you move over to the solving and compromise exercise, which we'll get into after this. This is going to be extremely difficult. Actually, I shouldn't say that, then you're not going to do it. This is going to be different, because we're not used to speaking like this. Right, to use I statements to take full responsibility for what's happening, because usually what people say, you did this, that's why I did this. You are like this, So that's the norm that we've become used to. So it's going to take some time to get adjusted to it, that I am feeling, but you have to be able to identify what you're feeling. It's very important. And you have to also know what you actually want to happen. We all know what we don't want to happen, but what do we actually want to happen? And then to show that consistent appreciation and validation. Validation is super important. And this is also where, like a stress-reducing conversation, the Gottmans have developed as well. So even John Gray, the author of Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, he updated his book. This is the bestseller in all of history. Most copies ever sold, this book. And he updated this, and he wrote a book, Beyond Mars and Venus, where he looked at biologically what's happening. So for women, they need to produce estrogen in order to be able to relax. And oxytocin as well. That's what gives them that feeling of relaxing, to feel that the stress is going away. They need to be producing that. And in order for them to do that, for most women actually, they need to share. They need to speak. For guys, because they're programmed to be fixers, that's their fitrah, they want to fix it. So they keep telling you, oh, you shouldn't feel like this is what you should do if you did this. And then what happens is she gets frustrated. But for men, if you learn to listen, you will make her feel good, and you didn't do anything, but you did everything. So he has something that's called the Venus talk. So for sisters, you go up to your husband and you tell him, hey, I have something that's on my mind, I need to talk. And all I need you to do is listen. And for men, we need testosterone to be able to relax. When a man gets angry and he loses it, and he acts on that anger, he is no longer producing testosterone according to him. He starts producing estrogen, which is the opposite of what he needs. And this is why that hadith, la taghlab, is so important. Right? At that time, they didn't know any of this. But it is so important, and we see through research why it's so important. That to be in control of your emotions. Because what ultimately that does is when a man reacts on his anger, it makes his companion shut off. That safe space is not there for them to speak their mind, because that's what ultimately is going to give them that sense of relaxation, which leads them to shut off. And that's going to create problems. So practice this as well, right? If you need, and for men, for most men dealing with stress, they like to kind of do some sort of activity. Speaking does not help most men. For some it does, but for many of them it does not. So this is where, when you understand that he's doing, maybe he's watching TV, maybe he's doing activity and stuff, that he's not pulling away from you. He's just dealing with it in his own way. But at the same time, for the men, we have to learn to actually tell them this. That, hey, look, I have something on my mind. I just need some time to figure it out, and I'll be with you and stuff. And time does not mean 2 days. It means a little bit of time. And then we come back. There's another book that's written, How to Fix Your Marriage Without Talking About It. And it goes on this concept, that men are not the best communicators, that's obvious. And secondly, that they don't feel, that usually talking makes it worse. Right? So you have differences here. And usually we deal with the other person the way that they would like to be dealt with. So usually what happens is when the wife is upset, the man goes and asks her, what's wrong? What do you say? Nothing, right? And then he asks her a second time, what's wrong? And you say, nothing, I don't want to talk about it right now. What does he do? Okay. He goes and does his own thing, right? Wrong move. Then shaitan takes over and the thoughts start coming. Oh, he doesn't care about me, this and this and this and this and this. In that situation, you have to push until she starts opening up. And you're going to feel that everything is your fault. You're going to feel that. Because you're going to feel inadequate. You're going to feel like you're not a good provider. You're going to feel that you're not good enough. But it has nothing to do with you. If we can learn how to remove our connection, emotion from that situation, you will become the greatest husband in the world. If you can be present in that moment. Present with me, there, listening, understanding, validating, you're good. And for men, because what happens is a trigger that happens. When women feel uncertain, when there's a security issue that's at stake, how do they deal with it? You ask questions, right or wrong. You want to know what's going on. He takes it as, she's challenging my role. She doesn't trust me, which leads him to pull away or react in anger. So this is a cycle that happens. He starts pulling away. She feels the relationship is in jeopardy. She starts asking more questions. He starts pulling away more. So this trigger just continues. The solution to this is what they said in the book. This is what they said in the book. That when she is asking questions, know that it's not about that, but respond back. That it is not about your sense of feeling guilty. That when he's pulling back, it's not about because he's trying to run away from you. It's just he might be dealing with something. But it's difficult to implement that. And this goes back to the same principle. The whole book is based on the principle, idfa billati hi ahsan. Respond with the better way. Always respond with the better way. But in order to do that, to make it easier, recognize the patterns that are taking place. What's the pattern here? Is one person more communicative and the other person pulls away? If that's the case, then move towards them instead of pulling away. If the other person is pulling away, move back a little bit so that they can come out of their shell as well. So recognize patterns that are happening within your relationship. The next one is the aftermath of a fight or regrettable incident. So step one, so this is something already has happened. You want to go back, and remember, you're looking at it from a theater viewpoint. You're not getting back into it, but you want to look at what happened so that it doesn't happen in the future. So the goal is always understanding. And what happened, how we can avoid this happening in the future. So the first thing is that you are going to share your feelings. And there's a list of feelings in the workbook that should be on the website, I believe. So who has the workbook or downloaded it? Okay.
I can also airdrop it real quick if anybody wants to open their airdrop.
So step one is you describe how you felt. So there's a whole list of feelings there. So choose as many emotions as you want. And you'll be surprised at the range of emotions somebody can experience in one situation. Because usually people say, I felt this, but when you look at all the things, people will say, I felt sad, angry, worried, afraid, not calm, stubborn, powerless, guilty, ashamed. I had no influence. Out of control, frustrated, unattractive. You'd be surprised at the range of emotions people can experience in one situation. So we take turns, both people go. And then step two is you describe your subjective reality. Because there's two sides to a story. There's a subjective reality on both sides. And we have to recognize this. That each person, your spouse, has also their own reality that's going on in their own world. And we have to understand that and listen to that. And you don't have to agree with it, but you have to recognize that they have their own subjective reality as well. So you take turns describing your perceptions, your own reality of what happened during this incident. Don't describe your partner. So the rules always stay the same. Don't describe them. Describe what you heard. So you'd say, I heard, I understood from this, I interpreted your behavior to be like this, which led me to do X, Y, Z. So you're describing your perceptions like a reporter giving an objective blow-by-blow description. And then the one who's listening, you want to summarize and validate your partner's reality by saying something like, it makes sense to me how you saw this and what your perceptions and needs were. I get it. So empathy comes in here as well. I can see why this upset you. If this is what you were experiencing, it makes sense to me. Right? And remember, validation doesn't mean that you agree, but that you can understand even a part of what happened in their world. This is very important. Because if I were to give you a picture of the phone, everyone would draw here, there would be different perceptions of how the phone looks. So that's exactly the same thing when it comes to your spouse in a difficult situation. They have their own reality, you have your own reality as well. And then if both people feel understood when they describe their realities and they validate, if they feel understood, you move to the next step. If you don't feel understood, then you repeat it until you feel understood. Then step 3 is, are there any triggers there? So for example, is there something in the past that reminds you of this situation? Maybe the feeling of you weren't validated during childhood, for example. And that made you fear something. So it's important to you. Is there some story behind that goes deeper? So this is the time to uncover that. So any memories or experiences that you have that situation reminded you of that led you to go back to that behavior. So this helps your partner understand what fears are there. And this is where people have to be honest. Right? And it's difficult because we don't want to feel vulnerable where somebody can take advantage of us. But if two people genuinely care about each other, this is an opportunity to take the relationship to a deeper level so that it doesn't happen in the future. So example of triggers would be, I felt judged, I felt excluded, I'm very sensitive to that, that reminds me of this. I felt flooded, I felt ashamed, I felt lonely, I felt disrespected. I can't deal with disrespect, it's very difficult for me to deal with that, so on and so forth. And then once again, you want to validate that aspect as well. That does any part of your partner's triggers and story make sense to you? Then you move to step 4, which is taking responsibility. So acknowledge what you did in this situation. So what set you up for the miscommunication? What was your state of mind? How did you set yourself up? So for example, it says, I've been very stressed lately and irritable lately. I've taken you for granted. I've been overly critical lately. I've just not been in a good mood. I've been emotionally unavailable. So you take responsibility of your state in that situation that led to you reacting in a certain way. And then specifically, what do you regret and what was your contribution to this incident or fight? I wanted to get the upper hand. I wanted to win. I regret saying certain things, these X, Y, Z to you. I regret attacking you. And then, what do you wish to apologize for? I'm sorry that I overreacted, I was defensive, I was negative, I attacked you. Because sometimes what happens is when a fight proceeds, in the beginning it's a misunderstanding, then it leads to people actually wanting to hurt the other person. Because your coping mechanism comes in, that sense of defensiveness. And if you accept your partner's apology, say so. If not, you would say what you still need. And then we move to step 5, which is a constructive plan that shares something your partner can do in the future to avoid this situation. If this happens, you're feeling this way, then let's utilize the word ouch, for example. Or let's call it timeout. And what can you do in that situation as well to make sure that doesn't happen again? And then if you're able to put that behind you, then you move forward bi'idhnillah. Or you can even ask that what do we need to do in order for us to put this behind us? So putting it behind means that it's done with, that we move on to the future and we're creating actually what we want rather than holding on to the past. Then you have the dreams within conflict exercise. So this is where two people, they're gridlocked. They're not seeing eye to eye on a certain position. So the speaker, you talk about your beliefs and feelings in regards to the situation. What is the dream? What need are you trying to meet? So for example, I'll give you an example. I had a couple I work with. They had conflict when it came to money management. So the husband, his dream was that because he grew up with a tight situation, he was very conservative when it came to his spending because he didn't want to be extravagant and waste money. So that was his dream, that people are more conservative, they're appreciative of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had. So he has a different style, he's more of a saver. His wife, on the other hand, she grew up, alhamdulillah, in a very good home. They had plenty of wealth there. They used to spend freely. So to her, spending was a means of being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. As for the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then speak about it. So to her, it was about gratefulness. Not about being extravagant and wasteful and not caring about money. So when this comes out, now they understand the position of the other person. That what's their dream? Through spending, they show gratefulness. Right? Through wearing nice clothes is not being shown off, because sometimes we interpret it like that. Oh, they're just trying to show off because they want to keep up with the Joneses. But in reality, there could be a different dream there. So once this comes together, now they understand, and you appreciate the other person for the dream that they have. But we have to make the other person feel safe enough to actually let that dream uncover. Because if they don't feel safe, they're not going to let that dream uncover. And you can utilize this in any sort of position where you're not seeing eye to eye. If it could be like for parents and stuff. People have elderly parents. Why is it important to you to want to have your parents with us, for example, or be close to them? This is the dream, right? Let the dream uncover, and then the other person speaks about their dream. And then finally, and you want to ask questions to also uncover that dream. Why is it important to you? What feelings do you have about this issue? What would be the ideal situation here? What do you wish for? What do you need? Right? So understanding precedes solving. And then finally, you get to the art of compromise. So yield to win, compromise with me like I am someone you love. Like, I don't like the word compromise per se, but it's about win-win. How can both people have a discussion where it works out for the both of them? And sometimes just feeling heard and understood is good enough for one person. That, hey, maybe in this situation we're unable to do a certain thing. But the fact that you gave me the time to speak and you heard me out and you validated the way I look at things, that's good enough. So in dealing with this, you're going to have these two circles. So the inner circle is areas that you are unflexible with. So the non-negotiables. And then the outer circle are those areas that you're more flexible with. So you want to keep the outer area more flexible. and you want to keep the non-negotiables as minimum as it can be. And then getting to yes. Okay, help me understand your flexible areas. What do we actually agree about? What our common goals are? How might these goals be accomplished? Who goes first at times? Two people have a dream, a vacation. They want to take a dream vacation, but completely different trips. Who goes first? Could be a way to solve it. Okay, you go first this time, but next time we're going to decide we're going to do this vacation. How can I help you meet your core needs in this? So please get the workbook and utilize this. So set up a system for yourself, which is considered the executive meeting. So you are two executives that run a household. And you show up at your best as leaders. And anything that conflicts that happen within, first and foremost, utilize the 6 steps to dealing with your emotions to kind of negate it during the week. If you're unable to negate it, then set up a weekly meeting that the both of you get together and then you discuss these things. So if it's a misunderstanding that you feel is important for them to understand, use the Rappaport intervention. If things got out of control, use the aftermath of a fight. If you're not seeing eye to eye, if you want to understand deeper, use the dreams within conflict, and then finally come to a solution that works the best for you. But always try to uncover what need is being unmet when it comes to these conflicts. And in any situation, always try to be repairing the situation. If you feel it's getting out of control, ouch, I feel this way. Can we take a time out? I think we're getting sidetracked. Let's get back to. So utilize things that will repair it. And then the Prophet ﷺ, he said that the best of you are the best to their families. Now if you look at any situation in your careers, in life, what needs to happen in order to be considered from amongst the best? Can you have the same work ethic as everyone else? You have to show up at a higher level. So in that same sense, even in marriage, the same thing, the mindset, the work ethic, to be able to create a wonderful marriage, bi'idhnillah. Now one thing I want you to take back is the daily 5. You want to do this on a daily basis, and it's very easy to do. Very simple to do. But it will have tremendous impact on your marriage, inshallah. So the first thing is, you want to try to give a daily compliment to your spouse on the way they look, on something they did, for example. So a special compliment. Not the common, oh, you're so pretty, you're so beautiful, oh, you're so nice, right? Think of something that would be special. A daily act of affection, a daily kiss, a hug, some sort of affectionate act. A warm greeting as well. You know what happens when you come home to your children? Ah, my son's name is Adam, right? Adam, I miss you, right? But when we see our spouse, Assalamu alaikum. So also have that same excitement when you see your spouse when you come home. When she comes home from work, when you come from work, whatever the situation is. Have that warm greeting towards them. That you're happy to see them. And then politeness. Then when we conversate with each other, there should be a level of politeness there that should not be ignored. And then appreciative words. Like we also always want to be appreciative of them. So for the next 30 days, I want you to appreciate something your spouse did. Okay? And it has to be something new every day. You can't repeat it. No repetitions. If they took out the trash, thank you for taking out the trash. That's appreciation. You can't repeat it. If they cooked you a wonderful meal, you thank them for that. You can't repeat that. You'll get through 5 days through the normal things that we say, and then you're going to have to start thinking. So this shifts your mind to look for the things that are actually happening within the relationship that are positive. Now one exercise, I'm going to end with this inshallah, that you can do that will change the way your day goes. And this is a lost art. And this is actually an act of worship, which is to count your blessings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala throughout the Quran, many times He's mentioned, يا بني إسرائيل اذكروا نعمتي التي أنعمت عليكم. O children of Israel, mention the ni'mah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I have blessed you with. O people, mention the ni'mahs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I have blessed you with. Now what happens when we actually do this? Let's implement this verse. Okay? You guys with me? Everyone, one deep conscious breath. Present in the moment. Close your eyes. Allow yourself to feel where you are. Feel that seat under you or that carpet and move into your heart. Move into your heart. That connection with Allah is open. He's listening. He's hearing. He's there. I want you to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Feel your heart saying, thank you, Allah, for everything you have blessed me with. Feel yourself say that. Now I want you to thank Allah for 10 blessings that you have in your life. Okay? 10 blessings. So feel your heart say, thank you, Allah, for that. Thank you, Allah, for another one. Thank you, Allah, for a third one. Feel your heart saying that to Him. Thank you, Allah, for a fourth one. Now you have to think. Thank you, Allah, for a fifth one. Thank you, Allah, for a sixth one. Thank you, Allah, for a seventh one. Thank you, Allah, for an eighth one. Thank you, Allah, for a ninth one. And then finally, thank you, Allah, for a 10th one. Now, during this time, who noticed a slight shift? A slight shift in your heart. That shift is you moving into a state of gratitude. That is what happens when you focus on your blessings and you thank Allah for it. The prophets in the Quran said, فَاذْكُرُوا آلَاءَ اللَّهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. That remember the favors of Allah so that you may succeed. Because what happens is, or what is supposed to happen, is that your heart shifts into a different state. It moves into a state of gratitude, which means that you bring more energy into your day. And if you do this when you start your day, so whenever you start your day, it doesn't take long. It took less than 5 minutes for us to do that. That shift to happen. So before you start your day, before you start interacting with your spouse, with your kids, with whoever else is there, all you need is 5 minutes to shift that state. That is the same shift that Salah is supposed to give us. But many of us don't experience that. I would say all of us probably don't experience that. So if you take this 5 minutes just to do it, and I want you to compare it. Do it one day and don't do it another day. And see the difference that you feel within your day. And then another thing, that self-care is very important. So make a list of 20 things when you go home that you actually enjoy doing. And do 1 or 2 of them every single day. And this doesn't mean take a 1-week vacation by yourself and leave your spouse by themselves. Or take a 10-hour leave of absence from your home, right? No, it means do little things that brings you happiness and joy. Because when you are in a good state, when you are happy and joyful, you will bring that energy into your relationship. And finally, based on everything that we went through today, what will you commit to? We covered a lot of things. What is something that you will commit to and start implementing in your relationship? Jazakallah khair for attending. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you guys, bless your relationships, and give you the best in this world and the next. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. I apologize for going over the time limit. but there was quite a few things that we needed to cover. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to ask. If not, then may Allah bless you and hope you have a good night, inshallah. So if you're in a rush to talk about something and he's not ready, this is where you would ask him that, hey, I have something on my mind that I really need to discuss. When would be a good time for us to discuss it? So you put the ball on his court and then he decides. So he takes responsibility that, okay, if I'm giving you a time, that means I'm showing up and taking responsibility for that conversation. So a statement like that would, or even like, hey, I'm really stressed out. There's something bothering me that's on my mind. I need some time. Can we sit down and talk right now? All right? So you let him know what's going on and that you need to discuss something, and you can tell him, can we talk now or can we talk later? So a statement like that could help, inshallah. All right, last round. Questions? All right, Jazakallah khair. We'll see you inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.